And once that's sealed, you've then got the legal right to make these charges. So there's a process, a legal process behind it. So we've got the 330 cameras I mentioned. They go all around the outside of that zone, but we've also got them inside the zone. It's very difficult, especially with a large zone like this, to monitor every single road. But we do think we've got all the main routes and also most of the routes inside the zone. So it would be very difficult to get in and out without triggering one of these cameras. The way it's dealt with is that the data from these cameras goes off to the government run a central service with the DVLA. They hold all the data for the nation's vehicles, not the council. So that data from the cameras goes off to them, and they can identify which vehicles aren't compliant with clean air zone standards for Bradford. What they then do is they're also taking charges from people that are choosing to come in and paying a charge, and they work out which vehicles have paid a charge, and they send a list to the councils of the one that haven't, and then those unpaid journeys are processed by the local authority in the same way we might deal with parking fines or other things where charges haven't been paid. They also pass the charges that they've collected to the local authority, minus like an admin charge that government charges. I think the thing to say here is there's a bit of misinformation in a way around clean air zones, that they're kind of a revenue raising exercise, whereas really the most effective clean air zones don't take any charges. What we really want is for these old vehicles not to come in and our air quality to improve and to improve health. So in recognition of that, legally, the charges themselves are ring-fenced to be spent on more things to improve air quality and the sustainability of transport. So it can't be spent on bin collection and other pressures that councils have got. Really, we don't want this money. What we want is these vehicles not to come in. And that's a difficult message to get across when a lot of the time you're asking people to check the vehicles and pay charges. So that's just something to bear in mind if you're doing anything similar. Yeah, why do we need a clean air zone? So it's about nitrogen dioxide and not meeting those EU legal limits for nitrogen dioxide. On the right, you can see a graphic. Anything in red on there shows where we're exceeding the legal limit back in 2018. This was after many years of knowing that our air pollution levels were too high and reporting them to government annually. And then government came to us and said, yeah, you really need to do something about this. This is not sorting itself out over time as was hoped. So the good thing about a clean air zone, it being, and I think it's partly to do with the size and scope of the clean air zone, is that if you look at this diagram at the bottom, the left-hand one, anything in green shows an improvement in air quality above the baseline as a result of putting the clean air zone in. So you can see that the benefits of this extend way beyond the boundary of the clean air zone into every ward of Bradford and probably other districts as well. It's just that we haven't modelled that. And you can see also those darker green areas where we get the biggest improvement. You can see that, you know, we're up to 35% reductions there, and they are actually some of our most deprived areas in the city as well. So this is a really nice intervention in that the real urban areas are where it gets the benefit, and they tend to be where our deprived populations are. So what we've done is been able to prove to government that putting this in place will ensure that we meet the legal limits for nitrogen dioxide, and all eyes are on all our data, feeling the pressure now the zone is live to make sure that we show that that's what happened. We'll be utterly transparent about it. We're working with lots of academic partners on this, and if that's not what happens, we will be putting in mitigation to make sure it does. So it's just an interesting time for us. The zone went live on the 26th of September, and all eyes are on our data. So this is just a link to, if the slides are shared, the ministerial direction that we got from government that kind of gave us the, we then tap into that Transport Act 2000. We've been given a ministerial direction, and it then puts us on the way to put in place the charging clean air zone, and it makes sure that there's no doubt within the population that the council is being ordered to do this by the government. It fits with the council's priorities as well, but it helps to be able to show that we've been asked to do it by government too. So the reason for this, it's a public health intervention. It's all about health. We know that we lose 200, the equivalent of 200 early deaths every year in Bradford. We've got research done in Bradford that shows that 25 to 30% of all our childhood asthma cases are actually caused by traffic pollution. We've seen research that shows that reductions in IQ in children and exposed populations, and links with cognitive decline and dementia for older people. There's links with low birth weight and nitrogen dioxide, and that research has been done in Bradford as well. And we know that 1 in 5 children in Bradford already have a breathing problem. So we've got, I'll show you some more data now. In Bradford, we've got basically some terrible respiratory health facts. And the trouble with that is it's not just air pollution, it's other things that are causing this: high rates of smoking, deprivation. But that means that we've got a population that's really sensitive to air pollution and will be made more poorly by it. So as a city, we've got more to gain from doing something about this. We've got 380 people turning up at Bradford Royal Infirmary every week with respiratory emergencies. So if we can reduce air pollution and improve these statistics, we will actually improve the lives of lots of people, but also save a lot of cost in the NHS. So that's another reason that drives forward this work. One of the things that we're doing in Bradford is it's something that hasn't really been done terribly well anywhere nationally in the UK, but we've got a really good opportunity to work with our health researchers that have been doing all this work, the Born in Bradford programme, to look at what difference putting in place this clean air zone actually makes to health. So we've got all these predictions around what difference it'll make, but we're now looking at actual data. And these researchers have got access to all our GP data, all our hospital admissions. They are working with families, about 50,000 people, really closely as well, in addition, looking at respiratory health and other health impacts and strokes and other things that are related to air pollution. And they'll be able to tell us what difference there is between before and after the clean air zone. Some of the difficulties around that are COVID obviously affected people turning up for treatment, but we can iron out some of those things through looking at control cities and other areas and be able to see the difference that this intervention has made. So this is just a little bit more information about Born in Bradford for anyone that's interested. We're really lucky. We've got this health programme already running, and the Born in Bradford programme's worked in a lot of the European health research studies. So we've been able to compare our cohort in Bradford with other cities across the EU, and we've got some really interesting data from that. So alongside the clean air zone, our usual local air quality management work continues. We've got, but we've expanded our network so that we can really monitor the changes that we see as a result of making this big change for the city. We've got 300 new nitrogen dioxide tubes out there. We've got 7 real-time stations, and we've got three of those have got particulate monitoring, both PM10 and PM2.5. We've also got some really good sensor work going on with our colleagues at the university, Deval and his team, out in schools doing monitoring, and also Born in Bradford are doing monitoring work with schools and with sensors. And the council are working ourselves. We've got some money from government to do some sensor work and a particle reduction strategy, because the clean air zone is very much aimed at nitrogen dioxide, but we're keen to look at other sources of pollution as well. And we've got some really interesting work ongoing around domestic fuel burning, non-road mobile machinery, and other things that are missed by the clean air zone. So I won't go into all those now, but if anyone was interested in those areas of work too, just to say this isn't the only thing we're doing by any chalk on air quality in Bradford. So part of the thing with a clean air zone, as I mentioned, there are displacement issues. Vehicles tend to want to go round a clean air zone to avoid the charge, and that can cause problems on small streets that aren't able to take that load of traffic. But I do think that it's going to be less of an issue given the size of our clean air zone. Basically, if you're coming into Bradford, there's no point trying to get round it because it actually includes all of Bradford and the outer ring road. So nonetheless, we have our monitoring team have put in some displacement monitoring. We've gone to 21 sites, and we're doing 3 tranches of camera data across all the traffic before the zone went in, a month after, and then a month after when things will probably have settled down somewhat. That's this month. And we're looking at any changes that we might see. The initial data shows that we've got no displacement problems to speak of, and we've seen a slight reduction in commercial traffic. Now that equates nicely with work that we're seeing within the clean air zone that's showing that we're getting more cleaner vehicles in than we are. There's less of the dirty ones. We're getting less people paying charges as time goes on. So that could be that we're no longer getting those older vehicles coming into the city. And we think that that's probably because Bradford is being used as a cut through by some companies that are basically going somewhere else but tramming through Bradford as a route up north rather than the M6, and they're actually choosing to take alternative routes, probably even outside of our district. So that displacement is further away than Bradford. Hopefully that's on the motorway, an appropriate route like the M6, but time will tell, and we're keen to talk to other districts about that. One of the key areas that we thought was really important and that government have supported us on is that to get a big change like this, there needs to be some financial help for those affected by it. We've given out around almost £30 million worth of grants to the city. Some of that is still left, but most of it has been got out to businesses already and vehicles already upgraded. All our commercial bus fleets are now compliant with the clean air zone, except for one vehicle that's been coming in and out. And I had to speak to one of the bus companies about yesterday that must have slipped through the net that we've spotted. But yeah, all our commercial bus fleets are now compliant. We've got over nearly 12 million gone out to taxis. We've got money gone out to HGV firms and an ongoing LGV, so that's vans grant up to 4,500 as well. So in addition to that, we've allowed all residents to have an exemption of one vehicle. So if someone's got a camper or something like that, or an old van that they run around in, we can make residents exempt. We've allowed businesses exemptions as well, but what we're finding is the businesses are taking the grants and upgrading their vehicles instead, which is great. So the reason that we can give those exemptions, because you start thinking, why are you actually doing a clean air zone if you're just going to exempt everybody? Well, actually, that's only 15% of the traffic that's registered locally in Bradford. And that thing I said about a through route there is shown by the fact that 85% of these vehicles that are causing the problem, these older commercial vehicles, are coming from outside Bradford. So we've done, the key thing around a clean air zone is that people know about it. Obviously, if they don't respond to it. It's almost like a behaviour change thing, really. The signs everywhere, the Department of Transport set out how those signs should be done like proper road signs. But actually, the awareness campaign that sits with it is really important as well, because the people tend not to look at road signs these days. They're all looking at sat navs and what have you, and they tend not to notice things so much. So we've done a massive campaign, and we've gone out regionally as well, out into Yorkshire, to let people know about the Bradford Clean Air Zone in advance of it going live. We've also done local engagement, and we've worked with Bourne and Bradford on that. We've gone out into communities that don't get a voice as often as they should. We've gone and spoken to those people, and that's really helped us shape the support packages. It helps us learn things like that taxi drivers haven't even got the money to pay for these grants up front and then claim it back. So we changed the way that we do our funding to accommodate that and allow them to have the money first, go get the vehicle. And then it's been a really useful process to go out and talk to communities and spend the time doing that. And really important with any change like this that you take everybody with you if you can. And the good outcome of that is that we know that over 70% of people surveyed support the clean air zone that live here. So that was a really good thing to have gone and done. We've also done a lot of work with schools, and that's involved measuring routes to school, finding the greener routes with schools, and doing backpack monitoring with kids, showing the difference when they walk in different areas, what the difference that is to their health. And we've done some creativity labs that we've gone out into schools, and we are genuinely getting ideas from kids on how to solve this problem. It takes a lot of work with these schools, but we did it last year as well, and it's really rewarding. We ended up with the winning groups with the best ideas coming into City Hall to talk to a panel which included a leader of the council and other important people in the city chamber, and the kids presented their ideas, and the kids just got so much out of it, and so did we. Some of their ideas are truly inspiring, and we're actually putting some of them in place. So that's been a really useful thing that we've been doing in terms of engagement. So this just shows you some of the ways that we've tried to get the message out. There's motorway gantries, our vehicle messaging signs, back of buses, billboards, every way you can think of. We've tried to get the message out there in advance of this clean air zone going live. We've done a lot digitally as well, social media, papers, anything that we can find to get awareness raised. And we know from survey work that the government's come into Bradford and done that there's over 90% awareness, which is pretty they said it's unprecedented that we've managed to let that many people in a city know, especially during COVID when it was quite difficult to get messages out. So what has the clean air zone achieved? So far, and I mean, bear in mind we've only been live 6 weeks, the work that we've done to get the clean air zone and get ready for the clean air zone means that 92% of licensed taxis, that's actually now up at 95% of licensed taxis, are actually at clean air zone standard. So that means that we've got the cleanest taxi fleet in the UK. But also, when we've gone and talked to taxi drivers, the other good thing we've found is that these hybrid vehicles are a lot more efficient. And we've got up to 40% fuel savings for those taxi drivers. So at a time when fuel prices shot up, that's been really welcome for them. We've got 85% of our buses upgraded, 20% of lorries and 10% of our local vans have all upgraded. So that means that we're going to have obviously air pollution improvement straight away. The funding that we've got has also attracted other funding, because I think seeing that Bradford's got the political will to do this and that we can put in place these kind of interventions means that there's now money come forward for electric buses. We're now looking at a hydrogen test bed up at Bowling Back Lane in the city. We're looking at a district heat network and other great things that will help us deal with climate change and air quality. And all these people are starting to come to us interested in Bradford now, because they see that we've got the support and the will to do these things, and that we can deliver these sort of schemes. So it's kind of bringing in other money and other opportunities by having a clean air zone. And also the clean air zone revenue itself, which is significant, is going to allow us to fund other things, that sustainable transport that I talked about. Unfortunately, we are finding that quite a lot of people are ending up getting charged, and that is because although our local communications have been brilliant and got that message out locally, actually a lot of the people, when we did early notice letters to people, what we found was that the people coming into the city are from all over the UK. I think the only place where they didn't come from was the Scilly Isles. So it's really difficult to get those messages out nationally, and it's meaning that we are ended up with a substantial revenue scheme from this. But that money can be spent back on Bradford that really needs it and needs to deal with this problem. So whilst we are trying to raise awareness and increase the amount of people that pay in advance, that funding will be well used in the meantime. The other thing is that we've worked out from our modelling that we will get 150,000 tonne reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and that's mainly from the drive to electric and hybrid vehicles, and reduced emissions from other vehicles and vehicles that don't come that are older. And also we got up to 35% reduction in nitrogen dioxide and associated particulate reductions. And we're expecting to see around a 10% reduction in emergency hospital admissions. That will be confirmed when we do the health work, and I'll come back to you guys and let you know how that's going as we get any data from that. So it's what's happened since launch day. We've had loads of interest. We've had a massive spike in inquiries at our contact centre. So anyone doing anything like this, do think ahead kind of what the impact will be and get yourselves ready and get resource ready, because that has been quite challenging. Obviously, we've had thousands of people ringing up wanting to know if they're affected. They've been charged. They want to know what to do about it. We've got 12 staff sat there on the end of the phone dealing with all that, and you need to be ready for that if you do something like this. Media inquiries have been through the roof, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. And we're now thinking about the next wave of communications. We need to communicate our success when we get the data. We need to help people to get payments made online and reassure people that cars are not to pay in Bradford, so that we don't get people not coming to Bradford that would otherwise come. We just are trying to encourage them to use other modes and to take the bus, the train, and to walk when they're here. So this is some of the media coverage we've had. If the slides are shared, you'll be able to look at that in a bit more detail, but there's been some really good coverage. The media have been really supportive of this. They have focused in where there's anti-clean air zone sentiment to an extent, and they've tried to show both that sides of the story, because we understand that whilst a lot of people, there's a consensus for a clean air zone, there are people who are still worried about the effect on them and their businesses, and they've gone and spoken to them and put their point of view across, but they have overwhelmingly pointed out the need for it and the health benefits of doing this. So that's been a good thing, that the media's put really balanced good stuff out there. This is an example of media coverage that was really interesting for us, where a guy came on, he was an anti-clean air zone person, and he pointed out that he didn't understand that when we create clean air, how do we keep it here? He says, because when the wind blows, the clean air goes. Are we going to put a big dome over Bradford? And this actually ended up going viral. It went all over the UK. It was on a programme called Have I Got News For You as well. And it wasn't satire, it was being serious, but I'm glad to be able to tell you that Lee Patterson got his exemption for his van the other week, so he's no longer quite as concerned about the clean air zone as he was. So that's my details. If anyone is doing anything similar or just wants to chat, I'm more than happy to talk to any of you and answer any questions that you've got.
Thanks, Sally, for great presentation. I know you're very busy today, and you still, made time to come and talk to us, and the amazing amount of work you and your team do, leading the way in terms of implementing clean air zones. So thank you for that. There are two questions. I'll read one, or I'll ask the one which Yenchia has asked, and maybe I'll invite Jo to ask her question as well. So Yenchia's question is around the change of attitude within citizens who participate in the project. So did you see any sort of changes? For example, he's asking about taxi drivers who didn't want to take part, and you give an example at the end, but was this, broadly seen in your experience in doing this since last year and a half, where people were not buying into this, and then they sort of took part and changed their opinion and are supportive of this or not?
Yeah, what we found, and I mean it's a difficult one if you haven't got the funding, but what we found was that when people participated in the support schemes and got their new vehicle, obviously they then knew they weren't going to be charged, and they got a newer, cleaner vehicle that uses less fuel. In the case of the taxi drivers, their attitude completely changed and they became much more positive. But not only that, they started to realise that their competitors in other districts hadn't got that advantage, and we're now going to be charged to come into Bradford and would be less likely to come and nick their customers. So those kind of things, you see the cleaner vehicles that you get upgraded, they've then got a positive advantage over other companies. So